My name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Saturday, August 10th. Today is day 309 since October 7th. This morning, I received a copy of a press release that was issued by the Gazan government media office that's run by Hamas regarding what they have identified as a massacre as the Al-Tabin school in Gaza. I was sent it by a press contact. The press release talked about the Israeli Defense Forces. It said that they committed a massacre inside the Al-Tabayin school in the city of Gaza, in which more than 100 people had been killed, within what was identified as a framework of the crime of genocide and ethnic cleansing against the Palestinian people. The press release said the occupation army directly bombed the displaced persons while they were performing the dawn prayer, that this was rapidly increasing the number of martyrs. The press release said that it not only held the Israeli government, the Israeli occupation fully responsible for the massacre, but that it was also holding the American administration fully responsible as well. The press release ended saying, "We call on the international community, the United Nations organizations, to pressure the occupation to stop the crime of genocide and the ethnic cleansing against civilians and displaced in the Gaza Strip, and to stop the torrent of blood flowing in the Gaza Strip." Al Jazeera reported on the same incident, saying that international condemnation was pouring in while doctors were struggling to cope as wounded people and bodies of the many killed were in many pieces. Haaretz reported on the story, saying that rescue services in Gaza were reporting that more than 90 people had been killed in the Israeli strike on a school where displaced people were sheltering in Gaza City overnight into Saturday morning. The Israeli Defense Forces said that it did strike Hamas militants operating within a Hamas command and control center that was embedded in the Al-Tabayin school and located adjacent to a mosque in the Daraj Tufa, which suffers as a shelter for the residents of Gaza City, adding that the reported number of casualties and wounded from the attack do not align with the information held by the Israeli Defense Forces, the precise munitions used, and the accuracy of the strike. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy said that he was appalled by the Israeli military strike on the Al-Tabayin school and the tragic loss of life, adding that Hamas must stop endangering civilians, that Israel must comply with international humanitarian law, that we need an immediate ceasefire to protect civilians, to free all hostages, and to end restrictions on aid. The EU foreign policy head, Joseph Borrell, condemned the attack. He said that at least 10 schools have been targeted within the last weeks and that there's no justification for these massacres. That was the EU foreign policy chief. Egypt said that Israel's deliberate killing of unarmed Palestinians shows that it lacks the political will to end the war in Gaza. Jordan lambasted the strike as a flagrant violation of international law and all humanitarian values. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister expressed its condemnation in the strongest terms. Qatar called the attack a horrific massacre. They urged the UN probe of the ongoing targeting of the schools and shelters for displaced people. Turkey said the attack demonstrates once again that the Netanyahu government intends to sabotage the negotiations for a permanent ceasefire. The Israeli Defense Forces said that it did kill Hamas's general security and operative in the group's military wing, Walid al-Susi, in southern Gaza. According to Thursday's numbers by the Hamas-controlled health ministry in Gaza, the number of those killed since October 7th of Palestinians is at least 39,790 killed, and at least 91,722 wounded since October 7th. The UK Foreign Minister, David Lammy, called on British nationals to leave Lebanon immediately in a post on X, and the US Secretary of State Blinken told the Israeli Defense Minister Gallant in a phone call yesterday that the escalations of tensions in the Middle East was in no party's interest, while stressing the need for a ceasefire in Gaza. Lebanon's health ministry said that one person was critically wounded in an Israeli airstrike in South Lebanon in the past 24 hours, and the National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby harshly criticized Israeli officials' attacks on a potential ceasefire and hostage deal, saying that some, like the finance minister Smotrich, have claimed that the hostage deal is a surrender to Hamas, but his arguments are dead wrong. They're misleading the Israeli public, and they would sacrifice the lives of Israeli and American hostages. We have been calling at Churches for Middle East Peace for the release of hostages since October 7th. We hope that there are many that still might remain alive, that they might be released, as we are calling for the release of Palestinian prisoners who are being held unjustly in Israeli military prisons. Senior Hamas official Musa Abu Marzouk told the Qatari Al Arabi television station that Israel is seeking to thwart negotiations in a ceasefire hostage release deal. And protests demanding the release of hostages and opposing Israel's ruling coalition are taking place countrywide tonight, Saturday evening, throughout Israel. Israel's military pressure on Hamas will cause more hostages to die, said Shay Moses, whose uncle Gadi Moses is still held as a hostage in Gaza. Enev Zonkaker, whose son Matan is captive in the Strip, blasted Netanyahu, saying that he is using the hostages as pawns to preserve his power. In the West Bank, Jewish settlers attacked 4 Arab Israeli women from the Bedouin city of Rahat, who had a baby with them when they accidentally entered the West Bank outpost of Gavat Ronin on Friday. They told us to get out of the car. We told them that we were Israeli citizens. We weren't doing anything wrong. We just got confused because of the Waze navigation system, but they wouldn't hear us, said one of the women, and the settlers torched their car after they fled the scene. A security source said that the women were lightly wounded and were evacuated to the hospital. Israeli police are investigating the incident. In Syria, U.S. troops in northeastern Syria were attacked by a drone. A U.S. official told Reuters there were no wounded, according to the incident report. The U.S. is releasing $3.5 billion in military funding to Israel as a part of a larger $14.1 billion package that was approved by Congress in April, according to CNN. They reported that yesterday. And I wanted to quote an August 1st op-ed that was published in the New York Times. This was published by Matt Duss. He's the former head of the Foundation for Middle East Peace. That's a partner organization that Churches for Middle East Peace works with. He and his co-author Nancy O'Kale wrote this in the New York Times. The almost certain escalation from the Hanania assassination signals a fundamental flaw in President Biden's policy toward Gaza, the hope that the Gaza war could be contained to Gaza. The possibility of a regional conflict has always been Mr. Biden's real red line. But for months, the war has been spreading to Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and now to Iran. The fact that it hasn't yet erupted into an even more widespread and intense conflict is the result of both diplomatic skill and a lot of luck, the latter of which appears to be running out. Again, that was from Matt Duss and Nancy O'Kale. The killing of a Hamas leader is the part of a larger war, an op-ed they published in the New York Times. Finally, I just wanted to share news. This was of an attack that happened on the St. Porphyrius Church, not months ago, but just on July 30th. I learned about this morning. I had not heard about this previously. Someone asked us if there was an update about the recent attack on the St. Porphyrius Church, and I had not heard about this. So I contacted the Greek Patriarchate in Jerusalem, and they said, yes, it's true. The St. Porphyrius Monastery in Gaza City, which served as a shelter for hundreds of citizens since the war began last fall, was hit by Israeli fire on July 30th. According to the Order of St. George, with reference to sources from inside the monastery, 3 artillery rockets landed on the first floor of the monastery. 2 of them exploded, injuring 1 Christian and 2 Muslim civilians. Among the injured was Valiant Saya Sori, who lost several family members in the previous blast in October. She has a large piece of shrapnel lodged in her hand. Another victim suffered a broken leg. The monastery wrote on Facebook, "We thank the Lord for the intercessions of St. Porphyrius. Everyone is fine. We have 3 moderate injuries, and we thank God for everything. We thank you for all of your questions and your prayers. To those suffering in Gaza, please consider donating through the Holy Order of St. George's Gaza's fundraising campaign. You can find find that on PayPal. The most recent attack resulted in the collapse of 2 walls on the upper floor of the building in the dining room, next to the area where the displaced are taking shelter. Some who were near the collapsed walls got injuries. It's with profound sorrow and deep concern that we've received the news of the attack on the St. Porphyrius Church in Gaza. The World Council of Churches put out a statement about that as well. You'll recall that the church was previously attacked on October 20th. That attack killed 18 people. The sacred site is a space of refuge for civilians, and we're devastated to hear that it was once again attacked. So please continue in your prayers, continue in your efforts calling for a ceasefire, continue in your efforts towards peace and a negotiated settlement. May God go before us. In the name of Christ, amen.